right, Deuteronomy chapter 12 is where we are at, and let me show you a breakdown real quick of what we got going on in Deuteronomy chapter 12. We've got two main divisions, two main groups, places of worship, verses 1 to 28, and then we will see protection from idolatry, verses 29 through 32. And the first section, places of worship, we won't get through it all. We will get through it all. We actually will not read all of it. Those of you that have been here for a little while, you know that sometimes we come to sections in Deuteronomy that we can skip over, not because they're bad, not because they're a waste of time, any of that, but it is repetitive. All of Deuteronomy, in a sense, is repetitive because that's what Moses is doing. He's telling the people, you know, this is the law. They've already heard it before, but he's telling them again. In fact, if you did not know this, the word or the name Deuteronomy actually means second law. And it's not a second law, but what it means is a second retelling of the law, or a second telling of the law. In other words, they've heard the law before, but Moses is reminding them again, running through it all once again and making sure that they understand before they leave, right? Just like your mom or your dad, they're a good parent, and before you leave, they give you instructions. You know, you're taking off for camp, or you're just taking off for the day. Maybe you're driving for the first time by yourself to school or something, and then they're like, okay, don't forget this, and what do? All right, I got it, I understand, okay, I got it, right? You're leaving for camp. Hey, don't forget, you know, to put your sunblock on and to do this and your bug spray. Yeah, okay, I've done it before, I've been to camp, all right. Well, Moses is telling them as they're getting ready to leave that, hey, you need to make sure you do this and this and this and this and these other things. So he's retelling. But as we come to that first section, verses 1 through 28, there are some sections in there where Moses is going to retell them what he just finished retelling or telling them. So we'll skip over some of that. This is where we're at. Places of worship, Deuteronomy 12, verses 1 through 28. And we pick it up here in verse 1 with familiar words. We've heard this before. These are the statutes and judgments which you shall be careful to observe in the land which the Lord God of your fathers is giving you to possess all the days that you live on the earth. Okay, now again, look at the end of verse 1. All the days that you live on the earth. That means for the rest of your life, do what I'm telling you to do. Okay? And yet he tells them that over and over and over again. It's funny how someone can give us instructions. Okay? You all at home, hopefully you have chores or responsibilities at home. If you don't, then I'll gladly talk to your parents and suggest some. Okay? But you've got things that you have to do. And it's funny how our parents, they can give us instructions like, hey, listen, your part of your chores now, your responsibility is to take out the trash every week. Got it. First week, good to go. Second week, good to go. Third, fourth week, fifth week, And what'll happen is our parents will come back and be like, hey, what's up? I guess that's me. Like this. What's up? What? Nah. And my kids are looking at me like, what did I do? Like, nah. You know what you did, sucker, right? But your parents will go like, hey, I thought you were supposed to take trash out. I told you that was part of your responsibilities. And you're like, oh, I thought that was just for like 2 weeks. Like, why would you think it was just 2 weeks? No, that's for the rest of your life, right? Until you die. Even if you move out, you come back and take the trash out every week, okay? For the rest of your life, okay? And it's funny how we can, you know, if we get away with something like our parents give us that responsibility, hey, it's your job to, you know, take out the trash, or it's, you know, you got to clean the bathroom or whatever it is. And then if you know, you do it for a little while, and then what happens is if you don't do it, and your parents don't say anything, forget about it, right? If your parents don't say anything, if they don't bring it up, then you're like, oh, guess it's okay. I don't have to do it anymore. it's funny how quickly we can drop the bar. We devolve. The standards begin to drop immediately if someone's not holding us accountable. And so all of that, what does that have to do with Deuteronomy chapter 12? At the end of verse 1, all the days that you live on the earth. Moses is making it clear, don't ever stop doing this. And guess what? The people were going to stop doing this. Because that's how people are, right? Moses leaves the scene. Joshua's in charge. Everything's good. But, there's no Moses there to be like, hey, what are you guys doing? Let's go. Come on. And Joshua would remind them, obviously. They would have their leaders. But they were just going to continue to on a downward spiral. And so he's telling them, making it clear, all the days that you live on the earth. Now, what he tells them here in verses 2 through 4. Verses 2 through 4, he tells them to utterly destroy something. Now, we're talking about places of worship, okay? And so what he's doing is he's telling them to utterly destroy the places of worship. Why in the world would he tell them that? I'll tell you in just a minute. But let me point out that back in chapter 7, we won't go back there, but in chapter 7, the people got the command to utterly destroy, uses that phrase, utterly destroy the people in the land. And we talked about why that was. Why would God want people destroyed? And that is because we wonder, we ask that question because we do not understand the times and the days that they lived in and what was taking place. If we did understand that, then we would go, oh, that's why God wanted them utterly destroyed. Now, when we did that study, and that is on YouTube, you can go back and listen to that if you'd like, just to kind of get caught up or get a better idea. But we talked about that and the fact that the reason God wanted the people in the land of Canaan destroyed was because they were wicked people. He's actually going to mention a few of the things today as to why he wanted them destroyed. But he wanted them destroyed for a specific purpose, okay? Now he's telling them to utterly destroy the places of worship. Look at verse 2. You shall utterly destroy all the places where the nations which you shall dispossess served their gods. In other words, the nations which you shall dispossess, that's the Canaanites and the Girgashites and all the different ites, okay, all the people that are in the land. He says, when you get there, you need to utterly destroy the places, look at verse 2, that they served their gods. Now, the people in the land of Canaan were up to their eyeballs in idolatry. Okay? Now, idolatry wasn't just worshiping or bowing down to an image. There was much more involved in that. Okay? We get little indications, little sneak peeks. Verse 2, this is where they serve their gods. On the high mountains and on the hills and under every green tree. Now, strange. Because where do you and I worship? Well, it is true that you and I worship in our homes sometimes. Some of you probably worship in your room, or even in the bathroom, right? Or in the shower, singing and worshiping, or lots of different places that you can worship. But generally speaking, we have this location that we come to called church. We have churches. And even when we do not have a church building, we still will oftentimes, if it's a home Bible study, it's just that. It's a Bible study in someone's home. But we always have that building. But generally speaking, we've got churches. But I want you to notice that the Canaanite worship that God just mentioned, he says, I want you to wipe all these places out. Notice this. He says, on the high mountains and on the hills and under every green tree. That is what you and I would call nature. Nature. Outdoors. Outside. And what God is indicating for the Israelites is that when you get into the promised land, you are going to see that their places of worship are set up out in nature. Sometimes they're on a high mountain, sometimes they're on a hill, sometimes they're under the green trees. This is an indication for you and I that the Canaanite worship, now they worshiped lots of different idols, lots of different gods, okay, in lots of different ways. But what was intertwined with their worship, what was an intricate part of the Canaanite worship, was the worship also of nature. When you go back and you look at the people coming out of Egypt, well, even in Egypt, remember when Moses, everybody knows the story, or at least you've seen the movie. And Moses goes to Egypt and, let my people go, and, the whole thing. And, what happens is all of the plagues, God, through Moses, releases all of the plagues, and you got the locusts, and you got the, the water turned to blood, and you got the, you got all the different, it goes dark, you got lice, you got all those different things. Those were all attacks on the Egyptian gods, because the Egyptians also, and in worshiping their idols or their gods, Ra or all their different gods, they also very intricately and intimately intertwined the worship of nature with all of that. The Canaanites are no different in that regard. And God is telling them, listen, when you get there, you're going to see up on the high mountains, you're going to see on the hills, you're going to see under every green tree, you're going to see that there are places of worship there. Now, what were they going to find? Verse 3, Moses says, and you shall destroy their altars. So they would find altars in all of those places. You shall break their sacred pillars. They had pillars that they would erect in honor of their gods. And burn their wooden images that they made out of wood on their own. You shall burn those with fire. You shall cut down the carved images of their gods. Okay, so anything that was maybe carved out of stone or any other kind of material, they were to destroy that also. And then he says in verse 3 rather, you shall cut down the carved images of their gods and destroy their names from that place. So the command to destroy the places of worship and the items that were there. But the point being that the Canaanites, again, worshipped not only the gods, but also nature and everything pertaining to that. And what you also need to know, you don't find out here, but everything was allowed in their worship. As we get down to the bottom of the chapter, you will find out that they... some of you know this already, but we will hear that they actually would sacrifice their sons and daughters. We know about Molech, right? Some of us have been here for that. We remember Molech. But everything was allowed in their worship. So they would worship their so-called gods. They would worship nature. But then also the way that they would worship was also poisoned or sinful, oftentimes including sexual activity in with their worship. And so it was wicked from top to bottom and back up again. It was bad stuff. And so this is why God in chapter 7 commanded them to utterly destroy the people. Do not let these people live. You cannot let these people live. It was so ingrained in them that if you allow them to live, they're just going to continue worshiping their idols and their gods and draw people away again. So that is why God said, utterly destroy them. And then that is why God says in chapter 12 to utterly destroy the places of worship. You got to get rid of it completely. Burn it to the ground, he said. Get rid of them. Destroy them. Because all of this is going to end up poisoning the Israelites. Now, does anybody want to take a wild guess as to what the cause was for the downfall of the Israelites in the future after this? Anybody want to take a wild guess? What do you think?
You start worshiping other gods?
Exactly. Yes, Cassie, thank you very much. That's exactly what they did. What Moses is telling them is what they end up doing. Isn't that strange? Isn't that funny? Because in verse 1, he said, all the days that you live on the earth. Shouldn't they have known, listen, do this for the rest of your life, and these things, don't do this for the rest of your life? Isn't that funny that they didn't listen? It's the same thing that you and I do, right? We don't listen. I don't listen. I I need to be reminded all of the time. It's one of the big benefits and reasons for being here on Sundays and Wednesdays. Why I got to be at church, twice a. I remember, when you first get saved. Maybe a lot of you don't understand this, but I got saved when I was 20. And then, you start going to church, man, and then you're like, you go on a Sunday because that's when people go to church. But then you find out, oh, wait, they got a midweek service? Like, you guys go to church on Wednesdays? I'm going to come check it out. You go to church on Wednesday. And then you got family like, hey, what's up? You like in a cult or something? And you're like, why? No, I'm not in a cult. Why? I mean, why are you going to church twice a week? Like, I just love being there. I just love being there. But one of the benefits of being there twice a week is that, hey man, it helps to keep me in line. It reminds me, I get to hear the word again, I get to worship, I get to talk to brothers and sisters that, we talk and we sharpen one another, and it's good stuff. It's good stuff. I need to be reminded all of the time. Listen, I'm a mess already. Okay? If God didn't have me in this position teaching, I would be an even bigger mess. It would be so easy for me to just, I'm going to skip church today. I'm going to go to the soccer game or whatever. It's okay. That's me. And so I'm so glad that he's got me here in this position, at least for that, for that aspect of it. But we need to be reminded, man. And Moses just finished telling them in verse 1, hey, do these things. What I'm telling you, do this for the rest of your lives. But what he's telling them, they will forget very quickly. Now, he says at the end of verse 3, you need to destroy their names from that place. Wipe out their names. Don't leave any kind of reminders. Get rid of them all. And in verse 4, he says, you shall not worship the Lord your God with such things. Don't mix them. Don't commingle. Don't mix them up. Don't mix up the religious, the worship system from the Canaanites and the worship of God. You cannot do that. You've got to keep those two things separate. Listen, you need to understand that not much has changed in all of these years. The worship of false gods is still prevalent. People still worship idols. But also the worship of nature is just as prevalent. That has not gone anywhere. It hasn't gone away. People still worship nature. It is very popular nowadays to have ladies, young ladies. Why is it the young ladies and not the young guys? I don't know. I'm sure there's some young guys involved, but it's very popular at the moment. Well, actually has been for a long time and probably will never change. But it is very popular right now. It's in style to worship nature. You go, what? What are you talking about? No, it's very easy to see, very plain to see. You can see it all over social media. Your favorite celebrities, the ladies, the females, so oftentimes are engaged in their horoscopes and, well, I'm a Pisces or I'm an Aquarius or, this is a Sagittarius, month or whatever. And they're all about it. That has to do with, the placement of the stars, the alignment of the planets and all these different things. It's nature. It's getting up. It's somebody waking up in the morning, looking up their horoscope for the day and then planning their day on what their horoscope says. We don't do that. That's commingling the worship. That's mixing. That's the worship of nature mixed with me being a Christian. I don't do that. That's not what we do. What we do is we get up every day and we go, let me see what I should do today. Lord, speak to me from your word. And then I spend some time reading the word and I allow that to direct me. I don't really care about the gravitational pull of the moon and what that's doing to the ocean out at the beach and what that means for my love life. What do the three have to do with one another? Nothing. But it is very popular. It's very popular to take some sage. You all have seen this. You take some sage, right? Buy some sage and you burn it and then you cleanse yourself with that. Heard about a college soccer player recently who will, before the game, she'll go out there with her sage and she will, cleanse the field. she's still not playing any better. What are you doing? Like, let's come on. It's very natural, normal, just, it's just what people do. And your favorite celebrities are doing it. And so you got to be careful that you're not being caught up in that. That's the way that the stars are aligned, the planets, and all these your gravitational pulls and all these different things, time of the year, time of the month, time of the whatever, it's the season, whatever. That have nothing to do with us. What does the Lord do? Look, the Lord's word stays consistent through all of it. Through all the fads and the phases and the styles and all the different things. These things have not gone away. You and I just have to be careful that we're not being caught up in it. You shall not, in verse 4, worship the Lord your God with such things. Now, he's talking about places of worship. In the first one, he says, utterly destroy these places of worship. But the next thing he does from verse 5 to 28, we are not going to read all of those verses. Okay? But from verses 5 to 28, what he now talks about is places of worship, but he talks about a unifying place of worship, or a unifying worship. Beginning in verse 5, he tells them that there must be a central location. Verse 5, but, see that word but? It's a little tiny 3-letter word, but it is a big word. Okay? He was talking about pagan worship. He says this is what they've been doing. The word but indicates a change of direction. So whenever you're reading and you come across the word but, just know that, okay, this is a change of direction. Okay? And so this is a big but. And he's telling them this is the way the pagans do it, but this is the way that you need to do it. And he tells them in verse 5, but you. See? When I come to the word of God, but you. This is what the world does, but you do this. And so that's why we're reading our Bibles, man. That's why we're reading our Bibles. Like, okay, now I'm finding out this is what the world does, but here's what I need to do. So, but you shall seek the place where the Lord your God chooses. Notice that he said place, singular. But you shall seek the place where the Lord your God chooses out of all your tribes to put his name for his dwelling place, and there you shall go. What he's telling them is there's a unifying worship. There's a difference between that one that needs to be utterly destroyed, and here's a unifying worship. And the unifying worship begins with a central location, and that central location will be determined by God. God will determine the place. That's what he just told him in verse 5. Seek the place where the Lord your God chooses. So now, if I'm an Israelite, I'm on the east side of the Jordan. I'm getting ready to cross the Jordan and go into the promised land off to the west. Now I know, it's in my mind, that once we cross that Jordan, among other things, I've got to be looking for the central location that God has chosen. Now, it's not like a treasure hunt and, where's it at? Oh, are there any clues? No, what he's saying is God will direct you to the place. But do you understand what he's doing immediately? Now, every Israelite in the camp who's been doing their own thing, and we'll read that in just a minute. Every Israelite who's been doing their own thing up to this point, now all of their attention concerning worship is focused on, boom, one place. Where is God going to set up camp? Where's he going to set that up? Now all of a sudden, in an instant, everybody's looking to one place. They don't know what the place is yet, but they know that there's going to be one central location, unifying worship. Why? We'll find out why. But he says in verse 5, out of all your tribes, he's going to put his name for his dwelling place, and there you shall go. He then begins to tell them in verse 6 and verse 7 about their sacrifices. There you shall take your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, the heave offerings of your hand, your vowed offerings, your free will offerings, the firstborn of your herds and flocks. All those different offerings. Now, if you're not sure, like, what are all those offerings? What is all of that? Again, you can always go back. Matt has archived all of these, so they're all on YouTube. You go back, you look, you can go through Leviticus and even through Numbers, and you can find out about all the different, sacrifices that they had to bring and all of that. But just for now, what you need to know is any sacrifices that they were making to God needed to be brought to a central location. It's centralized. Why? So that they didn't end up on the high mountains and on the hills and under every green tree. Because when you're out there on your own, mind starts to wander, and yeah, we're worshiping God, but what if we also did this and included these things? And what if we just started? Maybe we should start our own over here for people that don't want to go. See how that works? Let's all go to one location, okay? And so he tells them in verse 7, and there you shall eat before the Lord your God, and you shall rejoice in all to which you have put your hand. You and your households. Unifying, bring your families with you, right? In you and your households in which the Lord your God has blessed you. Everybody comes to one place. Now, the next thing that he tells them, beginning in verse 8 down to verse 28, is that separate worship is forbidden. Verse 8, you shall not at all do as we are doing here today, every man doing what is right in his own eyes. You see, at the point that Moses is talking to them here in Deuteronomy 12, as far as worship is concerned, they do have a tabernacle. But evidently, everybody was doing what was right in their own eyes. They were doing their own thing when it came to worship, and probably lots of other areas of their lives. But Moses points out here in verse 8, you shall not at all do as we are doing here today. Every man doing whatever is right in his own eyes. That's what happens. That's what happens. COVID. 3 years ago. And I hear we have another one scheduled for December. But anyways, 3 years ago. 3 years ago, shut down. 3 years ago, shut down. And Matt and I continued coming here because we were like, well, what are we going to do? I guess let's go Instagram Live. And we started doing Instagram Live. Some of you were around for that. Crazy. That was crazy. We'd be sitting here all alone. A little dark room. Walls were gray. It was gross. But it was the funniest thing because you all remember, man. See, what happens is this, that, during COVID, we had no choice. Everybody's watching online. And at first, it's kind of like, oh, online's cool, man. Like, I can sit on my couch, man, and my chonies if I want. And I can just watch, watch the pastor teach and all this. This is great. But you notice very quickly how easily it is to become disengaged, right? Because worship's happening, and you're trying to man, this is all I got. I gotta be into it. But also, I'm really thinking about a bologna sandwich right now. And there's no one here. There's no ushers. Pastor Chris isn't here. The leaders aren't here. Nobody can tell me I could actually go get a bologna sandwich right now. And what happens is I step away, get my bologna sandwich, come in, miss a song or two, but this is worship. Right? Immediately, I become disengaged. Immediately, the standard begins to drop. It's easy. I remember one time we were here on a Wednesday night, and we were doing communion. And it was the funniest thing. It's like I'd been announcing, okay, we're going to do communion, we're going to do communion, we're going to do communion. And then what we did was we actually broke up into small groups after online. We had people, we had the guy, Matt and I were in here with the guys, and it was like, okay, we're going to have communion. And I remember, at least a couple of the guys were, oh man, I totally forgot. Give me a minute, I'll be right back. They come back with like a Pepsi and a string cheese or something. And they're like, I didn't have any grape juice or bread. It's like, okay, I guess, we just gotta go with what we got, with what we have. But again, you see how easy it is, man. When I don't have, when I'm not in the schedule and when I don't have Wednesday night and Sunday night and, hey, man, this is what we do and this is where we're at. And, what happens is we begin to devolve very quickly. We begin to do our own thing. Everybody doing what is right in his own eyes. And it happens so quickly, right? The church, the church, countrywide, worldwide probably, but I know this church, the face of this church, it changed dramatically, drastically. Some of you are here today as a result of COVID. Because your church that you were going to shut down. And they didn't open up fast enough. And your parents were like, we're going to revival. We're going to revival. They're Americans over there. Let's go. And you showed up here, and that's why you're here. So it changed completely. People that had been at revival for a long time prior to that stopped coming. We haven't seen some of them since. So it changed. God in Deuteronomy 12 is saying, speaking through Moses. Moses is talking, but listen, centralized worship, because what that's going to do is it's going to get all of the people unified. It's going to keep them from just doing their own thing. Pepsi and string cheese for communion, It's going to bring everybody to one place. And church is a good thing, isn't it? It's a good thing for a lot of different reasons. There's the social aspect. Obviously, we're reading the Bible. We're worshiping together. But also what this place does when you go to church is it shows you, it teaches you what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what's right, what's wrong. And so you come here and you realize, all of you know you can worship at your house, right? Everybody knows that? Yeah? A lot of you do, no doubt. Or you can worship in the car, or you can worship again, when you're in the shower, or, in the backyard, or whatever. You know that. But when you come here, you hear the Bible taught, we worship together, you find out, you get a better idea of what worship is all about. Now, when you come here, you're not going to see people running around the room during worship. That's what TikTok videos are for. Okay? But we don't do that here. Now, some churches do that. And that's up to that church. When you read through the scriptures, you will find out, especially, you go through and read David's Psalms. The man was wild, undignified. He said, I'll be even more undignified than this, he said. And, he danced in his chonies one time out in front of everybody to worship the Lord. But there was clanging cymbals, and there was instruments, and there was singing, there was dancing. You can go through and read that for yourself in the Psalms. And here, we get loud, right? Matt likes it loud in here. I like it loud too. I got bad hearing. But it's good. And we clap, right? Some of us move a little bit, a little Holy Spirit, shuffle, right? Start to move a little bit, raise your hands, or you can sit down, you can stand up, you can kneel down. You've got some freedom here, right? But we don't jump up and run around. Why? Because it's distracting. It might be really fun to do, but it's distracting. And what it does is it causes people to look at me instead of be focused on the Lord. And so when I come here to church, I discover those things. I realize, this is how we worship. And so that's what God is doing for the people here. We got to have centralized worship, sacrifices, and essentially centralized church so that everybody's unified. In John chapter 4, I won't go back there and read it. I read it for the first service. But you know how they are. You guys don't need it. But in John chapter 4, John chapter 4 is a wonderful story about the woman at the well, right? Everybody knows about the woman at the well, right? Everybody knows about the woman at the well, right? You've had 5. Jesus said you've had 5 husbands, and the cat that you're with now is not really your husband. So we know about the woman at the well. Scandalous. And yet Jesus, we read there that he gets into Samaria, and he finds this well, and he sits down because he's tired. Jesus was tired. And he sits down. And then he looks over at this Samaritan woman she's pulling up water from the well. And Jesus, classic, he looks over and is like, hey, give me a drink of water. And then there was racial tension because she says to him, she doesn't say, I'll give you some water. She says, hey, you're a Jew. Why are you asking a Samaritan for water? You know the Jews don't like the Samaritans. Racial tension. And then he goes on. Now, you have to understand that Jesus was fishing, man. He's a fisherman. Master fisherman, pro. And what he did was he threw out that line, right? And said, hey, let me have some water. There it is. Right? There it goes. And then she, being the fish, she grabbed that hook. And now she's caught. And then he begins to reel in. And he says, can I have some water? Well, why are you asking me for water? Well, Jesus says, well, if you knew who it was I was asking you for a drink of water, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. And then he's drawing her in. She's like, living water? What's that all about? And the conversation goes on, and then she mentions Jacob. Jacob, you say? Jacob, okay. Let's talk about Jacob. Let's talk about where, and what he does is he reels her into this conversation about worship. And what he tells her in John chapter 4 is, he reveals lots of things in there. It's a wonderful passage. But as it pertains to our study this morning, what he tells her is this. He says, true worshipers will worship in spirit and in truth. God is spirit, and those who worship must worship in spirit and in truth. Now, why did I relay that story to you? Here's why. Because the Bible prescribes for us the way to do things so that we don't just have to come up with it on our own. Because if we come up with it on our own, it's a mess. It's a mess. And so God says, you want to worship me? This is the way to do it. That's what he's doing here. Destroy all of those places of worship. Utterly destroy them. And what I want you to do is instead, I want you to take part in this unifying worship. There's going to be a central location. All of your sacrifices will come there to that place, but also separate worship, that's forbidden. Do not do that. Verse 8, you shall not at all do as we are doing here today, every man doing whatever is right in his own eyes. He goes on to point out in verse 9, for as yet you have not come to the rest and the inheritance which the Lord your God is giving you. Okay? You're not in there yet, but when you get in there, this is what you're going to do. Now, beginning at verse 10, what I'm going to do is just highlight a few verses down to verse 28. We're not going to read all of that, okay? Because essentially what he does is he's retelling them what he just told them. But there is a couple little differences. Let me point some things out, though. Look at verse 11. Then there will be the place, we already heard about the place, where the Lord your God chooses to make his name abide. There you shall bring all that I command you. The sacrifices. I'm going to command you to bring certain things. You need to bring them to this location. Don't go sacrifice it on your own under a tree. Because that's going to lead you astray. Don't do that. Come over here. Look what he tells them in verse 12. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you and your sons and your daughters, your male and female servants, they were included, and the Levite, those were temple servants. But notice, bring everybody with you. Everybody comes to one place. Okay? Look at verse 13. There's a warning. Take heed to yourself that you do not offer your burnt offerings in every place that you see. Don't go up on the high mountain. Don't go on the hill. Don't go under the trees. Just do what I'm telling you to do. Okay? In verses 15 and 16, he just tells them, he's just letting them know that, no, that's just for the offerings. If you're cooking carne asada or whatever, you can do that anywhere you want. Go to the park, hang out, do it on a hill if you want. That's not an offering to the Lord. Just, you can do that on your own. But he goes back in verse 17 and begins to tell them, this is what you need to do. But look at verse 18. But you must eat them before the Lord your God. This is the sacrifices. Before the Lord your God, in the place which the Lord your God chooses. You and your son and your daughter, your male servant, and your female servant, the Levite. See, he's telling them again and again and again. But the reminder is central. Everybody comes to one place. He then tells them, take heed to yourself in verse 19 that you do not forsake the Levite. And he talks about the Levites there, making sure that the Levites weren't going to have their own portion of things. God intentionally left them out because God says, I'm not going to give you anything. He said, I'm going to give you myself, which was really cool. But the responsibility was on the rest of the people, the nation, to make sure that they took care of those temple, of those Levites. Look at verse 23. I'm giving you something that the first service didn't have. You know why? Because I love you, right? I like you better. That's why. Okay? But don't tell them. Okay? Was anybody here for the first service? I'd like you double. You know? Yeah, double portion. Verse 23. Only be sure that you do not eat the blood, for the blood is the life. You may not eat the life with the meat. Okay? So God gives them, again, prescribed. Don't do this. Now, why? I forgot to mention that in the first service, and but why? Because blood sacrifices, or worship, the pagan worship, the Canaanites, they included the consumption of blood as part of their worship. I mean, you've heard about it in the movies, but those things actually take place. Still part of certain groups' worship. And so God is saying, no, we're going to be different, man. We're not doing the same thing. We're not going to worship like they worshiped, because the people were wicked. And he didn't want them, he wanted them to be different. Now, from there, we'll move to verse 29, where we begin and finish our second main division, which is protection from idolatry. How were they to protect themselves from being carried away by idolatry? How are they to do that? Verse 29 says, when the Lord your God cuts off from before you the nations which you go to dispossess, and you displace them and dwell in their land. Okay, so once you get there, God has destroyed the people. You've moved all the people out. Whatever remnant there was, you've gotten them all out. Here's what you are going to do in verse 30. You are going to take heed to yourself. I use the word guard. Take heed means to guard or watch out. Okay? So you are going to guard. Take heed to yourself. That. Notice the language there. Take heed. Guard. Take heed. That. So he's about to tell them what they need to guard themselves against. Take heed that. And the first thing is, take heed that you are not ensnared to follow them. I use the words guard against being caught. Why did I use those words? Because the word ensnared is a very cool word. But, well, anyways, ensnared would indicate a trap. It would indicate, think about this is the most common picture. You've seen it in the movies, somebody going through the forest or whatever, sneaking around, or, maybe they're going, they're in a house trying to clear it, the whatever with their guns, and there's a tripwire. You know what tripwire is, right? There's a wire, you hit it, or maybe you watch Indiana Jones, and you hit that, and all of a sudden, you blow up, or, you get a dart or something stuck in you or whatever, all these different things, but that's the idea. He says you've got to guard against being ensnared. Now, if I'm trying to avoid a tripwire or a snare, what do I need to be doing? I need to be watching. I need to be watching where I'm walking. Where am I going? I could trip on something here. I mean, you talk about even a tripping hazard. You're out on a hike and you're trying to avoid, some tripping hazard. You got to watch where you're going. Same thing. Spiritually speaking, in our worship, in our religious activity, we have got to be careful. What are we doing here? Where am I at? Why are we doing this? I need to be aware of what we're doing. That's why your pastor and the leadership here are always, that's why we have rules, man. Don't go over there. No, at camp or whatever. You're like, no, hold on. Don't go over there by yourselves. Okay? You go over there by yourself, you're going to fall off, you're going to drown. And I at least want to be there to watch you so I can tell your parents, what you look like or something. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just take off and go do that. Why? The idea is there's hazards, and some people don't pay attention to their surroundings. Okay? I'm not looking at any of you. I'm just saying that some people don't pay attention. And what he's saying is you got to pay attention. Take heed to yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them. But there's a second thing that he tells them to guard against, and it is guard against being curious. He says there in verse 30, take heed to yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them after they are destroyed from before you, and that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? I also will do likewise. He says, don't even be curious. Don't even be curious. Now, for some of us in here right now, when I tell you, hey, don't even be curious about that, that just eats you up. It's because some of you are naturally nosy. Right? Let's just say it. Some of you are not. Who in here would admit, yeah, I'm just nosy? Anybody? Okay, thank you very much. Yes. There's a couple of honest guys in here. Okay? The rest of you, liars. Okay? Everybody's nosy, right? I mean, that's the whole premise behind social media. Like, let's see what, Kanye does in his garage, on Sunday afternoons or something. Everybody wants, like, what's so-and-so doing? Let me get a sneak peek. But listen, some of us are naturally nosy, and when you tell us don't do something, we want to know, well, why? Why not? Why can't I watch that? Why can't I listen to that? Why can't I go in there? And some of us, man, that kills us. Somebody tells us, don't look in the closet. That's all you can think about now. Right? It's like, what's in the closet? Right? Christmas time starts coming. By the way, Christmas is like, 99 days away or something like that? Hallelujah. Okay? Christmas is coming, or it's your birthday or some special occasion, and you know that now you know Santa Claus ain't coming. Okay? But mom and dad, okay, can hook me up. Okay? And then you start wanting to look around, and your mom and dad like, hey, don't look in the cabinets in the garage, because you know they're in there, right? But once they tell you that, forget about it, man. I can't even sleep. Like, I wonder what's in there. I wonder what they got. I wonder what's in there, or in the closet, or wherever, and you're in your parents' room, under the bed, or wherever, they got their hiding places or whatever. And, that's all you can think about, some of you. Now, me, I like to be surprised. So, I don't want to go look. Whatever's in there, I'll just wait. You guys all, you've been around, I like wrapping paper. I don't like bags. Okay, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but bags and tissue paper, come on. Okay, wrapping paper, ribbons, rip it all open, that's exciting to me. I don't want to go sneak peek, but a lot of us, man, we're like, parents like, don't do that. Why? That's the first question we want to ask. Why? He says, listen, when it comes to your religious activity, when it comes to your worship, he's telling them, you've got to guard yourself against being caught. And probably it's all going to start with that being curious. You've got to guard yourself about even being curious. Don't go looking for, I wonder, it seems like when we first got in the land, I remember there was a statue of Molech over there. And I think somebody destroyed it, but we should go check it out and see if it's there. And he says, no, don't do that. Don't be curious. Don't go looking. Don't go searching. Don't be wondering. Just leave it alone. Forget about it. The people would inquire. He says in verse 31, almost done here, 2 more verses, you shall not worship the Lord your God in that way. Don't commingle. For every abomination to the Lord which he hates, they have done to their little g gods. Everything that the Lord hates, every abomination. Now, again, real quickly, let me mention this before we finish. Back in chapter 7, we read about why God wanted the people, or the fact that God wanted the people destroyed, utterly destroyed. But we go, why? Why did he want them destroyed? Well, for different reasons, but here's one of them. Here's just generally speaking, here's why. For every abomination to the Lord which he hates, they have done to their gods. Every abomination. Anything that you can think of. Nothing was off limits for the Canaanites. And not only did their worship involve the worship of nature, but again, sexual practices were intertwined in their worship. and sexual practices of all sorts. We're not talking husband and wife. Nothing was off limits. People, animals, everything. Nothing was off limits. Nothing. And so he's saying here, you got to stay away from that completely, man. Just stay away. I told you before, like we read that and we go, oh man, these poor people, like they're just in the land just doing their own thing. And that's because you and I, we picture Paul Ingalls. And he's just out there with his mule, just, plowing the field, trying to plant his corn. No. This is not Little House on the Prairie. These people were wicked. And he goes on to mention in verse 31, for every abomination to the Lord which he hates they have done to their gods, for they burn even their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. Now you may feel like, hey, these people were in the land, man. They're just happy just doing their own thing. Yeah, they should have done all this stuff, but I mean, people should be able to do whatever they want. You think those sons and daughters that were being burned alive felt the same way? Or do you think some of them died wishing that they had not been born into that environment, into that society? These people were wicked. And in verse 32, he finishes at least this section with, whatever I command you, be careful to observe it. You shall not add to it nor take away from it. And guess what they did? They were not careful to observe it. And they added to it and they took away from it. Exactly what Moses told them to do and not to do, the instructions that he gave them, totally disregarded those things. Now, they'll do it for a while, and everything is good for a while, but then they totally disregard. Now, see what happened? I read the last verse, and you guys are done. You're like, okay, let's see, what's that Burger King? Hold on. See how quickly you want to just shut it down? Like, let's get out of here. Listen, I'm gonna help you out. I'm gonna help you out. Let me just check my text messages real quick. I'm just kidding. Cheap Wi-Fi.
The next day, he got a call from the man's wife saying, Chuck,
your parents are still in service. That gives me like 10 more minutes. No, I'm just kidding. We're just about done. But listen. Be careful. Look what he says. Be careful to observe it. Watch what you're doing. Pay attention. Be aware. You shall not add to it nor take away from it. Look, it's real simple, you guys. What we got to do is we open up God's Word, read it, and then just do that. You don't have to change it. You don't have to make it better. You don't have to add to it. You don't have to take away from it. Just read it and go, oh, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'll just do that. And then learn to be content with that. That's the problem is, man, we go, oh, that's really cool that God did that, but I think we can make it better. No, you don't have to make it better. It's as good as it's going to get. Just do that. This is what God desires. He gave us a book. It's a manual, right? Basic instructions before leaving earth, right? Bible. All I got to do is read this instruction manual. That's it. I don't need to change anything. This is not like IKEA hacks, where I'm going to get it and then, well, let me change it, make it better. No, you don't do that with the Bible. You just read it and just do what it says. That's all. Simple. So we want to find ourselves in a place where we're content with that. Lord, thank you so much for today, and thank you.